Hello everyone, welcome to BeginnersC This is going to be lesson number 10, and we are going to be talking about nested loops and static variables. Pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. You guys gotta get up to speed on this one. So, what we're going to be talking about today is how we can So actually, I'm first going to show you guys the answer to all of your finals. So basically, there's a really common sort of problem that every computer science teacher thinks that they are the man for doing. So I'm going to have a multi-line comment here. And so basically, they want you to output something that looks like this. Or something roughly like that. And some of them will say, oh, well, I want to be able to stipulate the number of, stars on each, or it starts with, or ends with, or whatever, or how big it gets, or, they're going to say something like that. But they're always going to give you this assignment. This is so done in every single computer science class I've ever seen. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what this means right here. So let's say that the first thing we want to do when we set this out is allow the user to determine the max size for the output. And again, some teachers are going to make you use pound signs, they're going to make you use numbers, they're going to do something. But this is the basic idea. So that's why I said the output. Now, let's talk about this. We have two things happening here. We start with I equal to 1. We can see that. We can see that that is what's happening here. I starts and ends at 1. So, and again, I'm just using I because that's our counter. So let's call it counter starts and ends at 1. So that's important. We also have another thing happening in there, and that's each time the counter is increasing by 1. Each time there is a second counter counting to the total, or the value of the first counter. So let me explain that. So on the first line, you could do that with just any single loop. But the second time, basically what we have is we have I is equal to 2, right? And the only way that we're going to get that to output 2 stars is if we have an inner loop that's also counting to I. So we have int j equals 0. J is less than I, and then we do j++. Something like that, So we'll talk more about that, but every time I gets increased, I equals 3, we get 3 of these, I equals 4, we get 4 of these. There's clearly another loop, because you can't just do that with I itself. So we're going to have to venture into nested loops to solve this. Now, the other thing is, once it hits its maximum value, it counts down. And so I want to give you guys an opportunity to stop watching now. In about 20 seconds, I'm going to start explaining how to go about doing this. And it won't take me long to get through this, as it's fairly simple nested loops. But if you guys want a challenge that will kind of push your knowledge, try to solve this on your own. And I'll give you guys a second or two to stop now. Okay, well, if you're still with me, you clearly want to see the solution. So, the way we're going to do this is we're going to be using 2 for loops. And I have no idea how I just ended up putting the scoping bracket behind it. That was an interesting keystroke I did there. So we're going to start with two very empty for loops. And we are going to be counting. So we are going to say int I equals 0. And equally, we need a unique value in here that is not I, so we're going to start with int j equals 0. And again, what we can do here is we can say cout and say, please enter a value. And we'll do cn value, and we'll make int value equals 0. Something like that. And alright, so, and now that we actually have this set up, we're going to copy and paste this, because I said we have to count up. Equally, we are going to need to count down. So, let's talk a bit more about this. Now we have our skeletons in place. We have two empty variables. There's no counting going on yet, because we haven't actually laid out what's going to happen yet. So we have a few things that we need to keep in mind, right? I have to count up to that number. So we're going to go I is less than value. So we know that this is true. We know that I has to count up to that value, right? And we also know that each time through that loop that j has to output however many number of stars is equal to I. So in this case, we know that j is less than I. And so equally, we know that I needs to increase because overall we're building that first side of our pyramid, I guess we'll call it. And we also know that j has to increase because j has to put in these, you know, more lines. So, you know, we know that it needs to go up. So we start with that. Now we know that each time through this loop, j needs to output something. So in this case, I did stars. Let's do a star. And so if we do just that, we're going to run into the issue where there's never a line break. So we're going to get a million stars all on one line. So after each execution of this, when that ends and j becomes equal to I, it's going to jump out here before this loop restarts. And so all we're going to put in here is a cout and L. And so now when we give just this a run, I'm going to comment that out for just a sec. When we give just this a run, this should give us our value. So let's, oh, I actually did I equals 0. It should be equal to 1. But as you can see, we get 1, 2, 3, 4 when we enter 5. So this should actually be 1 and less than or equal to. There's that off by 1 error that I was telling you about. So when we give this a run, we'll do 5. And as you can see, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is the first half of our pyramid. Now when we uncomment the second half, we have to do the exact opposite. So I is going to start set equal to value, right? Because we need I to start off at that maximum number. We need I is greater than 1, I minus minus. And then, believe it or not, j stays exactly the same. J is less than I, j plus plus. And the reason why is we still need j to output in the exact same way. J is counting how big I is, and it's putting 1 star for each number in I. So if I is 3, j needs to output 3 stars. So the same code remains true for that inner loop, because that inner loop, all it's doing is outputting the size of of I as represented by stars. And equally, we do a cout and L, because when we output that correct number of stars per line, we're going to need to put a blank, or we're going to have to end the line, so you know we shift down 1. Okay, So we have all this, and right here we have that off by 1 error again. So this needs to be greater than or equal to 1, because when it's equal to 1 we need to run this loop one last time. So we input 5 as our value, and we get 1 through 5. In this case, 5 executes twice. Now, some teachers don't like that they have 5 twice, so they'll ask you to make it an actual pyramid with just one of these. So what we can do in here is we can do if I equals value, we can skip this and put an else here, or alternatively we can start it equal to I equals value minus 1. And so if we do that, then we do 5 and we get a proper looking pyramid. So there's many different ways you can approach this. You can do this using while loops if you want. You would have to declare your variables outside, and you would have to increment them inside of your scopes. But the logic is exactly the same. And so I wanted to do this lesson early because it's a great example of when somebody does something that's very, very complicated to try to sort of throw you off. And you have to think about this in a logic that attacks the problem and breaks it down into its simplest component parts. And that's probably the most valid skill for programmers. So the only other takeaway I want you guys to walk away with from this lesson is next lesson we're going to kind of circle the wagons and we're going to go into a few more, for and while examples, just to show you guys, some more practical applications, because there's not going to be too many times where you need to do this. So let's wrap it up here. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to ask them. As far as homework goes, you can actually, you know what? I want you guys to use this homework to output a square rather than a pyramid. And I want you to let the user, let me type this out. Homework using nested loops, output a square. Bonus, do the same thing without nested loops. So that's actually a fairly easy bonus question. Should be somewhat obvious to those of you who knows what a square is. For those of you who want a challenge, which I guess will give double the points of a regular bonus, make the inside of the square hollow. Okay, well, I guess that should just about do it for this one. If you guys have any questions, please post below. Like, comment, subscribe, share with friends, and I will see you all next time.